The Reds opening day roster seems to be set. 26 men will take the field for the Cincinnati Reds on March 27th. We now have a clearer picture of who those 26 will be. Welcome in, everybody. Chatterbox Reds. I'm Craig Sandlin, joined by my good buddy, Mike Hart. Mike, how are we feeling today?
Good. I'm good. I kind of wanted this news to come a little bit earlier. I took a nice little nap on the couch watching basketball, hoping I'd wake up to some news. But then it took all the way till about 5 for us to get something. But I'm glad to see that we have it all set, and I'm ready to talk about it.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to talking about it as well. And before we get into it real quick, Mike, I see that you're rocking a brand new sweatshirt.
That's
Want to
right.
make sure that we call out our new partner, Homage. Chatterbox Sports is proud to partner with Homage when we've got a special deal for you. The first 100 listeners get 20% off site-wide at Homage. That includes all the great t-shirts, sweatshirts, and everyday gear you see. Just note a few exclusions apply, like starter jackets and New Heights gear. Obviously, Mike, you've got your sweatshirt. I am not wearing it today, unfortunately. I wore it the other day, but I've got the Sweetest Swing in Baseball shirt with the Ken Griffey Jr. follow through on it. And just got to be honest, I love Homage's quality and the gear that they have. It's just super nice. And I'm excited that they are on board. So to make sure you get your 20% off, use promo code chatter at checkout. Just go to homage.com/cbox and use code chatter, CHATTER at homage.com/cbox. All right, let's get into it. Mike, the Reds making it official just a few moments ago. I guess unofficially official at this point is really the best way to put it. But reports and a tweet from Reds on X.com kind of puts us in a position where we can make an assumption on the Reds 26-man roster. Reassigned to minor league camp on Saturday was catcher Will Banfield, and then reassigned to minor league camp and optioned to AAA Louisville. Outfielder Rece Hinds, outfielder JJ Bleday, and relief pitcher Zach Maxwell. And that kind of gives us a clearer picture. But let's start with those three specifically, JJ Bleday, Rece Hinds, and Zach Maxwell. And I want to start with the outfield battle. Those two guys had a phenomenal spring, really deserved to be on the opening day roster. But I think this came down to options. And then also just the Reds had a lot of depth and a lot of opportunities to be able to pick from multiple guys here. And the good news is they'll have depth. The bad news is that for JJ Bleday and Rece Hinds, at least, their phenomenal springs are somewhat unrewarded.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's one of those things that's unfortunate. They did everything that they could do, frankly. But a bunch of other people also had some really good springs as well. I'm thinking specifically Will Benson. And then, these are the type of players that I know they're going to AAA now, but are absolutely going to be a part of, have an effect or help this Reds team throughout the year. We saw people up and down. Remember, like Jacob Hurtubise and Blake Dunn were on the opening day roster last year for the Reds. So it's just, I think that is a big, just the difference between, I would take Hinds, Bleday, this year's Blake Dunn, and, maybe even Hector Rodriguez over those folks, right? So having that outfield depth, I think, is good for in case there is an injury, or if there is some slumping. There are some people that still have some options. If we start to see maybe somebody's tearing it up in AAA and somebody is struggling, a Marte, a Steer, a Benson, something like that, there could be kind of an infusion of energy to help this big league squad. And I think you're right. The fact that they all had options really was what it came down to, just because this now allows them to include Nathaniel Lowe, who did have an like an opt-out to be a part of this team going forward in the future rather than losing him.
Yeah, let's start with a couple stats just to break it down on JJ Bleday and Rece Hinds. JJ Bleday this spring, if I can get back to his page, hit .317 this spring with an OPS of 1.047. He had 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, was 13 for 41 at the plate, 3 doubles, and certainly showed outfield defense that will serve valuable on this team. Rece Hinds, on the other hand, just a absolutely ridiculous spring. I'm just going to call it what it is, a ridiculous spring. 410 at the plate, a OPS of 1.414, 5 home runs, 11 RBI, 16 for 39, scored 9 runs as well, 37 total bases for Rece Hinds. And look, you got to tip your cap to them. They certainly deserve a spot, but at the end of the day, Nathaniel Lowe also deserved a spot on this team, and that ultimately seems to be the last position player on the roster will be Nathaniel Lowe, who didn't have an option, was here as an NRI, and seemed to make the team. What do you like about Nathaniel Lowe?
Yeah, I like the fact that he just has a little bit more of a track record of success in the majors. JJ Bleday obviously had a very good year 2 years ago, but struggled last year. And then Nathaniel Lowe also struggled last year. That's why he was only able to really get a non-roster invitee, which I think was surprising to a lot of people, because leading up to last year, I think he had above a 110 WRC plus in every year that he had been in the big leagues. So I think that this guy brings a little bit more of a veteran presence as well. And he has less flexibility because of being able to play in the outfield. But I think this adds a sneaky amount of flexibility too in the case of an infield injury, right? If he's able to DH, if there's an injury at third base and we move Suarez to third, and then we can move Sal to DH and Nathaniel Lowe to first base, or if there is something even on the infield where Steer or Stewart have to play second base, and then Nathaniel Lowe could be at first base. So he allows you to have that flexibility position wise. And then I think it's just, when you have somebody who has been around for a long time, won a World Series, things like that, been in a pressure cooker, that's the type of person you want coming off the bench in your late innings as a pinch hitter to hopefully get on top of their best righty in the bullpen. So I think that all those things, ultimately, this decision allows them to keep him in the organization because they'll be able to make the team, which I think is better for the long run, because we see through the long 162 season, there's going to be times where you're going to need to bring people up, and it's better to have somebody like JJ Bleday ready and available in AAA to bring up, rather than not have somebody like Nathaniel Lowe because he would opt out to go try to find a major league spot somewhere else. So I think the decision makes sense. And I think Nathaniel Lowe has done enough to be able to make, to make this decision something that, while it was a tough one, clearly, I think we all can understand where it's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take a quick break to remind you that you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a place to get support for anything related to mental health. Whether it's an immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between. It's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay. All right, Mike, let's take a look at the final 40-man roster. Put together a little spreadsheet for us that I think will help us kind of visualize exactly where the Reds will end up. We'll start at the starting pitcher. Of course, they're going to bring 6 starting pitchers to the opening day roster: Andrew Abbott, Nick Lodolo, Brady Singer, Rhett Lauder, Chase Burns, and Brandon Williamson. All will make the opening day roster. Kind of up in the air a little bit. We haven't had a chance to talk about it one-on-one. Your opinion on how the Reds will utilize that 6-man roster, starting pitching roster, and what you would do if you were the manager.
Yeah, I actually really like the fact that we are getting creative, especially with some of these off days that are coming early on in the season, because I think it's, when you have the flexibility with these off days where you're potentially not going to be as taxed relief pitcher wise, you can maybe sacrifice that last person on that last reliever to bring in somebody like a Brandon Williamson, who's had an incredible spring, had probably his best start yet last night, and has absolutely deserved being in the lineup, and then utilizing him in a really creative way. You got to think about it. Imagine him piggybacking off of Chase Burns, right? Chase Burns throwing 100 from the right side with a crazy slider. And then after 4 innings, because Chase Burns maybe isn't built up all the way, or, really just wasn't as pitch efficient, in comes Brandon Williamson for 3 innings coming from the left side with, 94, but just a crazy breaking ball and a changeup and things like that. That's just, for teams, especially teams that are heavily platoon, that is something that is a huge weapon that I'm very happy to see that Derek Johnson and Tito are taking advantage of, because I think that could be really useful in just like getting you to, in that scenario, you get 7 innings out of somebody and then you just hit, Santiago Pagan and we all go home happy. So I really like how that's doing. I think that it would also work as a piggyback to Rhett Lauder if need be too, just because anytime you have righty and then lefty coming in, there is, with platoons, and we've seen it, like if the Reds had Will Benson and Nathaniel Lowe in, and then in the 4th inning in comes a bulk left-handed reliever, like that would put a lot of tension on Tito to either, get them out or face them with matchups that they really would struggle with, this left on left. So I really like that they're doing this. And, the way Brandon Williamson is pitching, I think I mentioned it last night, but like if he keeps pitching that way, even if he's the piggyback, he might end up being number 5. Like he might get that spot when they finally condense down to a 5-man rotation. Like he might get that spot if he continues well. And maybe they put Chase Burns to the bullpen, or Rhett Lauder goes down to AAA to continue to stay stretched out. So we'll see where it goes. I'm just very happy and excited that they're being creative to, hopefully be effective in winning games early in this season.
Yeah, relief pitchers will go with 7. Of course, one of the starting pitchers taking a spot normally go with 8, but Emilio Pagan will likely be your closer to start the year. You've got Tony Santi on there as well, Graham Ashcraft, Pierce Johnson, Brock Burke, Connor Phillips, and then Sam Moll takes the last spot in the bullpen, with Zach Maxwell being reassigned today. Maxwell had a good string of appearances there over his last couple, had 3 straight scoreless appearances without walking anybody, which was the big piece, because in his first outing of the spring, he walked 4. And we know that was one of the major components to Zach Maxwell was the control. So for him to go several 3 straight outings without a walk and without giving up a run, that was a good sign for him. But Sam Moll ultimately takes the last spot. Sam Moll had a great spring as well. Your take on this bullpen and where Terry Francona goes from here with them?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And he did mention that lefty righty matchup didn't have anything to do with it, but it's hard. I find it hard to believe that with Caleb Ferguson going down and there being just only one lefty, if Sam Moll is not in there, it didn't at least factor into the decision a little bit, especially with how good Moll has been over his career against left-handed pitching. But ultimately, I think this did come down to this almost the same situation of Lowe Bleday, right? Sam Moll, no options. Zach Maxwell has options, right? It's like we want to keep this guy in the organization. He has yet to give up a run in spring training, so like that Sam Moll that is. So it's it's hard to argue that somebody that does that doesn't deserve a spot on this team.
Yeah, hard to argue that for sure. And I was just looking real quick. Some quotes are coming out from Terry Francona. I wanted to make sure that we touch on them if it makes sense. Sam Moll this spring, though, 9 games, 9 innings, 2 hits, no runs. It's one of those things where sometimes people just earn the spot. And in this case, I think that was pretty obvious that Sam Moll had earned this spot. Catchers were an obvious conversation. There was no discussion to be had there. Tyler Stevenson and Jose Trevino will be your catchers on opening day. The Reds don't have anybody on the 40-man at the catcher position. So if one of them were to get hurt, that's going to be a conversation that's going to need to be had. I don't know where they go from there, to be blunt. Will Banfield was optioned today, but he's not on the 40-man roster. So some decisions would need to be made if one of those two were to go down, knock on wood. Infielders, Sal Stewart, Matt McLean, Ellie De La Cruz, Cabrian Hayes will likely be your starting 4 across the infield on most days. Eugenio Suarez likely to be your DH most days. And then Nathaniel Lowe rounds out the roster. Terry Francona on Lowe getting the final spot just a few moments ago. Quote, "It was the role. It's a bench role, and we really want Bleday and Hinds to play. We told them that. They both swung the bat really well. We talked to Lowe about the role. I think that's the reason. I told Hinds he couldn't have done more. The role is a bench spot, but we want you to play. Your thoughts on the infielders, the expected starting lineup, and then again, any comments on that quote from Terry Francona about Lowe's role being a bench role and therefore going to him over somebody like Bleday or Hinds?
Yeah, that makes sense to me, right? Nathaniel Lowe is somebody. Hey, the spot that they were planning on filling wasn't somebody that was going to get at bats, and I think that was kind of why people like Nick had mentioned is just like I don't see them putting somebody like that in there because the number of at bats that bench spot's going to get is probably not nearly as much. And for young guys like Hinds and Bleday, we want them to continue that hot spring into playing every day. So in case they are pressed into service, they'll be ready to go. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. It's unfortunate for sometimes timing is weird, but that's kind of what happens. But hopefully they're able to continue their hot hitting in AAA. We're going to have a monster AAA team this year, kind of like we, at least offensively did last year. And we'll have people ready to be able to contribute to the big league squad eventually.
Yeah. And then the outfield, TJ Friedel, Noelvi Marte, Will Benson, Spencer Steer, and Dane Myers will be your outfielder. Dane Myers kind of the last outfield spot, but it felt like that was a foregone conclusion at this point that he would be on the roster. Spencer Steer could have put him in as an infielder, could have put him in as an outfield, ultimately just a utility man, and that's the expected role for him. I don't think there's a whole lot of conversation about the outfield, to be honest with you. I think it was pretty cut and dry in terms of where the Reds were going to go there, especially once it was reported last week that Will Benson had been informed that he had made the opening day roster. That kind of solidified where the Reds were. The last question, I guess, was Dane Myers, but at least to me, Mike, it felt like a foregone conclusion that Dane Myers had made the team. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. He's only confirmed that with how he's hit, especially against left-handed pitching. They went out and got a guy specifically to be hitting against left-handed pitching, and that's what he's done, and that's how I expect them to be used. I do have a question for you, Craig. Do you think that Dane Myers is in the opening day lineup? We are facing Garrett Crochet, left-handed pitcher for the Red Sox. Do you think that they would include Dane Myers there, or do you think it's going to be probably an outfield of Steer, Friedel,
it's going to be
Marte? You think it's going to be Steer, Friedel, Marte because it's opening day?
I think it'll be Steer, Friedel, Marte because I think that's your outfield against left-handed batters, and I think that's going to be the rotation until otherwise proven, and that's what makes it difficult for Dane Myers because you talk about Rece Hinds and JJ Bleday playing every day. Well, I don't think Dane Myers is going to play every day. I honestly don't know how often he's going to play because Terry Francona loves TJ Friedel. And so the question will, at least in my eyes, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, the question will be between Dane Myers and Noelvi Marte.
Yeah.
I think that's really the conversation. TJ Friedel, I think you can pencil into center field without any conversation. And I think you can pencil Spencer Steer into left field. The question will be, will Dane Myers or Noelvi Marte be roaming right field to start the season? I find it hard to believe that Terry Francona wants to start the year with a message to Noelvi Marte that you're not good enough to start against left-handed pitching, because if that's the case, when does he start? But that's my gut take, is that it'll be Steer, Marte, and Friedel. I could certainly be talked into Dane Myers starting over Noelvi Marte, but you're also talking to a guy who's on the record saying that Noelvi Marte is going to be your breakout player of the year. And he has not shown it this spring. So I don't know. Are you thinking Myers over Marte at this point?
I don't just the thing that
Myers over Friedel?
No, well, I that's like a battle I'm not willing to fight because it's just like, well, why bother arguing about it? Because we know that barring an injury, Friedel's out there every day. So the thing that's gotten me is there's been a lot of chatter from Tito this spring about Marte's struggle against left-handed pitching. So it's like, I know there's been issues in the past. We've seen reverse splits. We're like, how much of this is real? How much is not? This is definitely something that the Reds are looking at. So I think maybe initially Noelvi Marte is out there against lefties, but I think as things continue to move on, if he continues to show that reverse splits of being poor against lefties, I could see them going maybe Myers in center, Friedel in left, Steer in right. We've seen Steer move over to right field in this spring as well, and just kind of go from there. And then against right-handed pitching, it would be Friedel in center, Benson in left, and or Steer in left, Benson in right, or something like that. So I think that there are, there is something, I guess, that then completely relegates Marte to the bench. I'm not sure if
Well, I think
maybe it's Marte in right against righties with Benson in left against righties with Friedel in center, and then they just switch Myers and Steer for Benson and Marte, depending on the handedness of the batter, of the pitcher.
Well, I think Noelvi Marte is going to be given a chance, right? Ultimately, that's what it comes down to, is he's going to get every opportunity to prove himself. But at the end of the day, he's got to remember, first and foremost, he has options still.
Yeah.
And second of all, you've got JJ Bleday, a left-handed bat, waiting down there at AAA to take your spot.
Yeah.
And so if you want to really talk about getting into platoons and rotations, Dane Myers, Spencer Steer, and most likely TJ Friedel being your outfield against left-handed pitching, and then TJ Friedel, Will Benson, and JJ Bleday being your outfield against right-handed pitchers certainly makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And I know that Noelvi Marte, as a young, highly viewed prospect, is likely to get a lot of opportunity here. I think he's going to have a long leash, but at the end of the day, if the Reds are in contention, which they're expected to be, and they're getting to a point in the year through the first 25% of the year or something, Noelvi Marte isn't coming around, and JJ Bleday continues to show what he showed during the spring down at AAA, there's absolutely a world where JJ Bleday could be replacing Noelvi Marte on the major league roster. And at that point, you would absolutely have a pretty obvious platoon between left-handed and right-handed pitching.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I think it's Marte's spot to lose at the moment.
Correct. He's going to be given every opportunity. So let's talk about that depth. And we talked about it before we started recording today. This is a team that's going to have every opportunity to show itself, but also it's probably the deepest team that this Reds team has had in a very, very long time. So we'll start with the outfielders and infielders. You've got CES, Edwin Arroyo, Leo Balcazar, Rece Hinds, JJ Bleday, Blake Dunn, and Hector Rodriguez from a position player standpoint, waiting down there at AAA, all on the 40-man roster. In the bullpen, you've got Zach Maxwell, Kyle Nicholas, and Luis May. And then from the starting rotation, Chase Petty, Julian Aguiar, and Jose Franco. Of course, rounding out the 40-man roster will be Caleb Ferguson, and Hunter Green will go on the 60-day IL once that opens up at the start of the season to make way for Nathaniel Lowe to be on the 40-man roster. But this is a very deep positional player organization right now. There's a lot of guys who I think you can call up and have some success at the major league level. A little more concerned on the starting pitching side, to be honest with you, but your thoughts on the 40-man minor league depth at this point?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely something that look at that. That we now have a crowded AAA outfield, right? Which one of the Hinds, Bleday, Dunn, Rodriguez is, I guess, do you just have one of them DH? It's crazy that it feels like the depth is so much that it's like we now have a crowded a AAA roster. So it's always a great thing to have. We know that there's going to be some injury somewhere, knock on wood, hopefully not to anybody anytime soon, but we're going to need that, and having that depth is going to be extremely helpful.
Well, let's talk about the rest of that depth that's not even on the 40-man roster. You've got Ivan Johnson, you've got Austin. Huh?
Well, sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, we can talk about catcher too.
Yeah.
No, Ivan Johnson, Austin Hendrick, Carlos Jorge, Jay Allen, all in the wings as well, that are expected to be major league players at some point. Ivan Johnson, Austin Hendrick, Carlos Jorge, and Jay Allen all Rule 5 eligible this year as well.
Yeah, I think it'll be up to who it's there in an interesting spot where the Reds can just be like, all right, guys, there's spots that are limited. Go earn it. See who pops and who doesn't. I know Austin Hendrick is a post hype sleeper that was a first round pick that has really struggled but has shown a little bit of life and sense. So I think they're just saying, hey, this is something that can be earned by you all if you can go out and play well. Another thing you got to think about too is anytime you have like such depth like this, you wonder who may or may not be a trade piece, right? Somebody that you might be, other teams might be willing to part with a bullpen piece or something like that to get in some of the depth that the Reds have, because that's at least 3 guys at the top of AAA that could be playing in the major leagues. I think that we can successfully say that. So that would be another thing to keep in the back of your mind as we get closer to the trade deadline. If those guys continue to hit without a spot, maybe they are somebody that they're able to trade away to gain somebody that is going to help this team in other ways.
Yeah, I also saw a comment earlier today about the middle infield major league roster depth. And right now you're an injury away from either Sal Stewart or Spencer Steer having to be your everyday second baseman or shortstop. And most likely second baseman, because if one of the two got hurt, Matt McLean would move over to shortstop, or you would have to replace second base. But yeah, Spencer Steer or Sal Stewart being your everyday second baseman, probably also not ideal for what you're looking to do. But yeah, and then you mentioned it before I made the comment that the catcher position, the Reds are left without a man on the 40-man roster at the catcher position. Of course, they have Will Banfield, Michael Troutwine, both in the organization. But man, that's the one position, and I brought it up with RM Layton the other day. It's the one position that I just don't feel like the Reds really have organizational depth at in terms of being major league ready. Obviously a lot of excitement and hype around Alfredo Duno, but if something were to happen, which I mean, I hate to say it, but the catcher position is one of those positions that you should expect an injury. I don't know what the Reds do in that position.
Yeah, I think they tried to address something like this with Ben Rortvedt, right? They were like, okay, we'll hopefully be able to stash him, and then as the roster crunch came, they tried to sneak him through waivers again, and it didn't happen. So you're right. This is a gamble. I think there's PJ Higgins as well. I know he's played a lot of first base, even third base, but he can catch as well. So there is some folks in AAA now. If something were to happen, I think the gamble that they're making is that if there was an injury to Stevenson or Jose Trevino, that it probably would be something that they would be able to shuffle around the roster using this 60-day IL for either somebody like Stevenson or Trevino. Maybe they got hurt in a way that means they're going to miss a couple months, or with somebody else that they might be able to sneak through waivers. So that's the gamble they're making. Hopefully we get a bounce back season and a healthy season from Stevenson with Trevino as the great backup. But yeah, that's the gamble that they're making without that, because if something were to happen, they're going to have to do some shuffling here in the 40-man that may cause the Reds to lose somebody that they find very valuable.
Yeah, final call out from Mark Sheldon of MLB.com. This is the 26-man roster as it sits today, but keep in mind, waiver claims can always happen. Other things can always happen between now and Thursday. So we'll, of course, have you covered right here on Chatterbox Reds if anything else comes up. And if there's any big breaking news, we go live anytime we can to try and cover it. And we've got you covered on podcast version as well, wherever you get your podcasts. So appreciate you all tuning in. For Mike Hart, I'm Craig Sandlin. This has been Chatterbox Reds. Until next time, everybody, we hope you have a great one. We'll see you next time.